Episode 34, Emanuela.
Months later, I received a call from GISTZ for an interview which I had placed on hold for over a week. One quiet night while I was having personal time rehearsing and worshiping in my music room, I heard a quiet whisper, "Go for the interview." I have shied away from one-on-one interviews since the death of Aria. She had always been the one to help prepare me for interviews, as I often told her how nervous I would get on set, trying hard to give the best response while keeping a not so nervous face to the audience. She would often say, "You are only a mouthpiece. Just deliver as you received and enjoy the attention while it lasts." The last sentence hasn't made sense for years, but today it does. Enjoy the attention while it lasts simply means enjoying being used by God while I am still alive. That night, I sent an email to GISTZ confirming my availability. Mrs. Johnson was extremely glad to have me on her set. She briefed me on the questions and who the host was. When I heard Emanuela, I thought to myself, devil, you aren't ready to give up, right? I had possibly heard the name Emanuela more in the past 2 months than I have ever heard in my life. It was either at the shopping mall where someone calls, "Emanuela!" and there I was looking to see who Emanuela was, only to find a 3-year-old child, or in church when the pastor made references to the name Emanuela. The other day it was on the news. I couldn't understand why an event in Sokoto State was mentioned on Lagos NTA News. And yes, the presenter's name was Emanuela. It was so bad that I felt like shutting out the world for a few days just to be able to breathe without anyone mentioning the name Emanuela. I guess God could have complained too, because there was a point when I told him to either reveal this Emanuela lady to me or delete the name from my hearing. Instead of hearing Emanuela, the word should become silent. Something like, "Come here," silent, or "My name is," silent. The bleeding of a renowned Nigeria Television Authority (NTA) collapsed this morning at around 6:30 a.m. during the breakfast news. The prominent host of this program, Miss Silent, would have been in the collapsed building had exchanged shifts with her colleagues, Miss Yemisi. It was mid-year and it had rained the previous night. The ground was wet and soaked. I wanted to spend the day indoors, but I received a text from Mrs. Johnson of GISTZ reminding me of the meeting. I felt lazy, but I had a responsibility, and I am a man of my words. I promised to come, and I intended to keep that promise. I showered and dressed up, pulling out the next available suit nearby as the weather was a bit chilly. A look at my reflection showed that I was good to go. I arrived at the organization and met Mrs. Johnson waiting outside. Mrs. Johnson had been a great help in publicizing my music without us having to reach out to her or pay a dime for publication. Last year, to honor her contribution to the ministry, I sold into her charity organization. The joy she exhibited about the funds and her heart of thanksgiving had intrigued me about her ministry and personality. We had several off-screen chats, and I had uploaded the wondrous sacrifice she makes to evangelize the gospel on her own part. In life, talent will never be enough to convey your gifts to the world. You need resources, and most importantly, people. People are the fastest route to passing vital information, and thanks to technological advancement, the gospel can easily reach the world while seated in your comfort zone. Those people I'm talking about here signify the great work Mrs. Johnson does. I believe that we all have a part to contribute in making the gospel widely available to every nook and corner of the earth, if only we can identify our niche and grow within it. In the book of Ephesians, chapter 4, verse 11, it says, "So Christ Himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers." In this passage, the apostle Paul is explaining that Christ has given spiritual gifts to believers in order to build up the church. These gifts include apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, which can be compared to the gift as we all discover in ourselves. We have been endowed with these gifts from God in order to build a church. We as a church are not in competition. Even if we have 20 or more music ministers, we should notice their uniqueness and what sets them apart. There may be similarities, but there are no exact same sounds. God knows exactly what He was doing when He made it so. That's why I greatly celebrate Mrs. Johnson's contribution to the church. After a warm welcome and a well-deserved hug, she led me to the showroom, and that was when I saw her for the first time. When she said, "I am Emanuela Wilson Girimache," I already had a confirmation in my spirit that she was the one God spoke about. You may ask, how was I able to keep my cool despite this revelation? Well, I didn't. She made me feel comfortable around her, and it was easy to keep cool. Not until she asked,
"Sir, we would like to know your relationship status. Should be expecting wedding bells soon."
I was speechless for a moment. I could hear my inner self screaming, "Why wedding bells when I am just meeting you?" When I caught my tongue, I smiled and said, "We can only hope." That was the only reply I could give her at that point, as it was the honest truth. I noticed a change in her mood though, and I seriously hope that it was what I was thinking, that somehow God didn't let me in this dilemma alone, that she was also visited like Mary. At least, knowing we are on the same page will make things easier for both of us. But she replied that she had something in her eyes. I was tempted to help her look at it, but I retained my cool, remembering we had cameras on our faces. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder if those were actual tears from her eyes. I remember the compliment I gave. I said she made me comfortable and she reminded me of my sister. Well, I don't even have a sister, just an elder brother. I was referring to Aria. I couldn't say she reminded me of my girlfriend because that would prompt another question. So to avoid it, I lied. I had the best interview ever, and I felt like I will do this more often, only if it's going to be with her.